Alston in N-Gauge, exhibited by Peter Brown. The design brief for the layout was that it should be on one board that could fit in the back of a car and be interesting to run. Looking for inspiration, a friend suggested a northeastern terminus station such as Alston in Cumbria. Realizing what a wonderful station building was still there, and what an interesting and challenging model it would make, I looked no further. From the outset, it was clear that compromises would be needed. An exact model of the station and sidings would need a bigger baseboard than I was planning and would involve few buildings and lots of open space. Artistic license came into play, the track plan was simplified, and the position of the coal drops and goods shed was changed. The former turntable was reinstated, but the biggest change of all was to relocate Alston High Street to be next to the station, rather than some distance away. Every building is scratch-built and is based on an actual Alston building, with a view to creating a sense of place and to try to catch the atmosphere of the town, the highest market town in England. To misquote Morecambe and Wise, all the right buildings but not necessarily in the right order. The fine-scale track is all handmade with code 40 rail but is N-gauge rather than 2mm gauge. The period modelled is late steam and the transition to diesel DMUs. Borrington by the Sea in UoGage, exhibited by Andy Hudson. Borrington is a former GWR branch line in North Devon. Due to declining numbers, the once double track has been reduced to a single line in places. The line travels past the picturesque Riverside Caravan Park and into Borrington Station before the short seawall on its way to Bristol. The line still carries some freight, but during the busy summer season runs holiday steam specials along with short commuter trains into Bristol. The holiday traffic is all that saved the line from Dr. Beeching's axe in the late 60s. Lots of diesel and steam action. The 64XX with its auto coach, along with Class 25s, 31s and 33s, plus a few others rumble through this busy little seaside town. The caravan park is ideal for relaxing and watching trains go by. The fishing is excellent in the River Tour, and the Seawall Cafe makes a smashing bacon sarnie. A perfect summer escape when the sun is shining on the golden sand and the busy seawall. Most of the buildings and bridges are scratch-built along with kits from scale model scenery, Pico and 3D printing corner. The grasses and resin water are from WW Scenics. nberg UoGage, exhibited by Jim Finlayson. I was inspired to build these two layouts in order to capture a little bit of Switzerland and show how the area has evolved over time. A bit of time-lapse modelling, you might say. nberg is a fictional RHB station seeking to portray the feel of the Grisons Canton, possibly the Albula Valley, by using models of actual buildings in the area and having a vertical component to the scenery. The track plan is based upon begun but much modified to fit the space available. Each layout being 2.4 meters by 1.2 meters. The first layout is set in 1913 at the peak of the RHB steam era, when the greatest variety of locomotives was in service. It was fairly straightforward to choose 2013 as the period for the second layout, when trains were primarily loco-hauled and multiple units were beginning appearance. Technically, the layouts have conventional softwood and ply baseboards. Scenery is aluminium mesh covered with mod rock and where appropriate Hecky rock foil. Buildings are mainly 3D printed, some using wood filament. Track is Pico HOM using DCC with Rockrail software. The layouts operate within a private Wi-Fi network to allow remote control from tablets. Stock is predominantly BEMO with some STL, D&R and some scratch-built, 3D printed. Thorp in UoGage, exhibited by David Lloyd. The fictional sleepy village of Thorp is located at the end of the equally fictitious Yorkshire Wolds Light Railway, although a medieval village of that name is shown on historical maps and appears in the Domesday Book. Originally constructed in the 1800s, the short light railway was intended to help the scattered agricultural communities of this northerly part of East Yorkshire to get their products to the market towns of York, Beverley, and Hull by linking it with the Market Wheaton to Beverley line at its southern end. Saved from closure in the 1960s by a group of local people, the Yorkshire Wolds Light Railway now provides regular passenger services using the last remaining Sentinel steam railcar and assorted 060 steam locomotives on loan from British Rail. The rolling stock is an eclectic mix of old carriages borrowed or bought by the railway from a variety of sources, and in some cases, refurbished by a small but dedicated band of enthusiasts. Good services continue to provide domestic coal supplies, animal feedstuffs, assorted agricultural supplies, and a well-used horse dock, allowing cattle, sheep, pigs and horses to be transported to market or the many agricultural shows that take place around the county. This 8 feet by 2 feet layout packs a great deal into a small space, including a station, goods shed, coal yard, turntable and horse loading dock. Most of this in just under 5 feet of railway scenic board. The remaining space is occupied by the concealed 3-road sector plate with a village road seen above. The layout is built in fine-scale UoGage 7mm FT and operates using DCC with sound. Wardlaw in UoGage, exhibited by Rutherglen Model Railway Club. The layout is based on an imaginary small Scottish town in the 1950s and 1960s. It is served by a main line and a canal. The canal has commercial barges and has lock gates. The era is set in time where steam is in decline and diesel engines are gradually replacing steam engines. Stock consists of steam engines and green and rail blue diesel engines. The layout is continuously running with an 8-road fiddle yard at the rear. The buildings are mostly kit-built with some scratch-built items. Glen Farest in nberg, exhibited by Elgin Model Railway Club. Have you ever been searching for something and just can't find it and end up asking yourself the question, farest? Well, you might have a similar problem if you were to look at a map to find Glen Farest. In the 19th century, the Great North of Scotland proposed a line between Arman Bridge and Lochkinver, which would have linked with the Highland at Coleraine. This would have given the Great North running rights from Elgin to Inverness in that battle between the two companies. It never came about, but imagine it did. Situated on what was the LOBBR, the Lochkinver and Arman Bridge Railway, the station at Farest is, like many similar places, located well away from the village it serves. However, it is located very conveniently for the Glen Farest distillery, which it was originally built to serve. Glen Farest Distillery is one of the smaller and less well-known. Being independent of any large group, it produces its own single malt, a 12-year-old marketed under the name Farest New, and a 15-year-old called Farest Gone, traditional Gaelic names. The distillery sits at the end of the glen down which the River Farest runs. The village of Farest is at the head of the glen, and a line was built to it some years after the station was opened. It is served by a bay platform at the station from which the line rises steeply and runs behind Farest Vor until it reaches the village some miles away. The layout is traditional analog operation. Fountainhall TMD in UoGage, exhibited by Derek Scott and Jonathan Webb. Fountainhall TMD is a fictitious depot in the Edinburgh area set around 1979 to 1984. built as a subshed of a larger depot in the late 19th century, by the late 70s, it had been relegated to little more than a locomotive stabling and fueling point with driver sign-on facilities. It lies within an inner city, in a large cutting, surrounded on three sides by retaining structures. The depot is going through a period of decline and likely destined to find itself redeveloped as a supermarket car park within the next 10 to 15 years. Traffic generally consists of locomotives being prepared to work local passenger and freight services around the Central Belt and Fife, as well locomotives being ready to haul expresses further afield to Perth, Dundee, Aberdeen and Inverness. Classes 20, 25, 26, 27, 37, 40 and 47 are a regular sight at the depot in the late 70s, early 80s. A Class 08 shunter is allocated to the depot and can be seen working tanks for the depot's fuel oil as well as other various duties. Occasionally, a visiting peak or deltic will attend for stabling before being prepared for its journey back south. Track and all but two turnouts are Pico Code 75 bullhead rail. The majority of structures, including the sheds, are 3D printed. The retaining walls are a combination of 3D printing and plaster cast. References for the layout have been taken from a number of depot photographs from around Scotland. Arman Bridge in UoGage, exhibited by Perth Model Railway Group. Arman Bridge is a fictitious place situated somewhere in mainland Britain and is set in modern times, covering the period from the 1980s to the current day scene. This time frame allows for the display of rolling stock from the British Rail blue-grey era to the ever-changing liveries of the privatised railway companies which currently operate throughout the UK. Whilst the town name is fictitious, the main track plan is loosely based on that at Stirling, circa 2003, and Modeller's licence has been liberally applied to add additional tracks, a loco refuelling, stabling point, permanent way and commercial freight sidings and platforms. The track and point motors are standard Pico. The buildings are proprietary card and plastic kits modified to fit the scene. The 9-arch viaduct was made by utilising and adapting 3 proprietary card single-line viaduct kits glued onto a wood and ply frame. The girder bridge is built around a wood frame and pillars, using multiple plastic kits for the superstructure. The storage yard baseboards have been built as a universal unit and can be used in a 4, 5 or 6 board configuration, depending on the requirement of the display layout. This eliminates the need to build separate storage yards for future display layouts, which may be shorter than Arman Bridge.